Every video and episode of the It's Cavalier podcast is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoy the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos, podcasts, member shoutouts, and more. And as always, thank you for watching. Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac, and today we are kicking off the expectation series for each and every player on this roster, and we begin with none other than point guard Darius Garland, who is going into year 7, believe it or not, with the Cavaliers, which sounds crazy to me. It's already been nearly 6 calendar years since Garland made his NBA debut back on October 23rd, 2019. 7 seasons. What? That's insane to me. Now, I'll tell you what, year 7 can be a critical year for a lot of players for various reasons, whether it be Kyle Lowry, who spent the first 6 seasons of his career figuring out things between the Grizzlies and the Houston Rockets before eventually landing in Toronto in year 7, where he would become a franchise cornerstone over there, or Kevin Love, who had to make serious adjustments to his game for better or worse in year 7 after being traded to the Cavaliers and becoming the third option that we know and love for so many years here after being the best player on his team for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Steve Johnson, Steve Smith, Rashard Lewis, Anton Jamison, Chris Middleton, and Zach LaVine finally broke through and made their first all-star rosters in year 7. And a lot of players, believe it or not, actually won their first championship in year 7. There's Michael Jordan, that's well documented, Jason Tatum and Derek White just 2 years ago. SGA just won the title in year 7. Chauncey Billups, Bruce Bowen, and Kenny Smith, just to name a few. And I got a fun Cavaliers fun fact for you this for the day, and that is, in this franchise's now 56 years of existence, there have only actually been 16 players who have played at least 7 years for the Cavaliers, or rather 7 seasons for the Cavs. Darius Garland would make that 17. And for those of you who are wondering, that list actually includes the likes of Anderson Varejao, who played 13 seasons technically in Cleveland. I know that last one was just a couple of games, but it still counts, right? You got Big Z, who played 12 seasons for the Cavaliers. LeBron James, obviously, who suited up for 11 different seasons in the wine and gold across 2 stints. Tristan Thompson doing much the same in 11 seasons spread out across 2 different stints. Danny Ferry for 10, Bingo Smith for 10. You got the foursome of Austin Carr, Kevin Love, Mark Price, and Hot Rod Williams, who each suited up for 9 seasons. Brad Doherty and Phil Hubbard for 8 years. Craig Elo, Daniel Gibson, Larry Nance Sr., Campy Russell are the others. Sans Darius Garland to suit up for at least 7 seasons for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. And I got to tell you, right, few are as accomplished through 6 seasons, let alone 7, as Darius Garland, who is already 11th on the Cavs all-time leading scorers list with 7,204 points. The only player, honestly, that has more point production through his first 6 seasons in wine and gold is Kyrie Irving, who finished with 8,232 and who is also 8th on the Cavaliers all-time scoring list. Now, here's the thing. By season's end, Darius Garland could very realistically leapfrog into the top 7 on that list. And right now, Hot Rod Williams is actually 7th at 8,504 points. Garland is also firmly in third place on the all-time assist leaders for Cleveland with a whopping 2,558 of those, as well as third on the total three-pointers made with 897. Now, in addition to that, he's 11th in steals, 22nd in games played, 16th in playoff points, 7th in playoff assists, and is tied for the franchise lead in all-star selections with two. Suffice to say that through his first 6 seasons, Darius Garland has been one of the best players in franchise history. And it's my opinion. I know a lot of people probably would disagree with this, but I do believe that he has lived up to the expectations of a typical fifth overall pick, at least during the regular season. That latter point is probably the one that's most important. And that, my friends, is where things truly pick up in terms of my expectations for Darius Garland on the season. And listen, I am all about enjoying the journey. This is something that you guys have probably heard me reference ad nauseum. I am a big fan of the journey, the regular season and the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows that brings on a yearly basis, because let's not be coy here. Anything can happen in any given year across the NBA. Injuries, miraculous title runs, breakouts, etc. Sometimes these come in different shapes and forms. And Darius Garland had his during the 2021-22 season, in which he was the driving force most nights for an upstart Cavaliers team that appeared ready to finally pull itself out of the doldrums of a rebuild, the second post-LeBron rebuild. He made his first All-Star game and roster that season and has generally kept up that level of play and then some during the regular season, jaw injury notwithstanding. He had a fun season last year. I think we can all admit that. And that was arguably his best year, right? Arguably his best year, maybe the most important factor offensively for a Cavaliers team that ended up winning 60 plus games last year. As a result, he got named to a second All-Star team. He flirted with the coveted 50-40-90 club. He was receiving all NBA hype and then was poised to finally submit himself as a playoff riser. That unfortunately never happened. And we all know the story here. Garland suffers the toe sprain during the regular season and re-aggravated it in game 2 of the first round series against the Miami Heat. He ended up missing the next 4 games and wasn't anywhere near the same level of player upon returning in game 3 of that second round series against the Indiana Pacers. He was criticized. His toughness was doubted. And once again, his future with the franchise was called into question, with many fans and analysts suggesting that it was time for the franchise to move on if possible. We all saw it. There were a lot of different trades being thrown out there that I'm not going to rehash it all, but I know, and that a lot of people were ready to ship his ass off out of town. Right. And then the bombshell finally dropped that he underwent surgery to repair his toe and will likely miss the start of the 2025-26 season. It was only after that surgery was announced, that many people finally understood just how debilitating that injury may have been for Garland, especially somebody who is so reliant upon his shiftiness, his speed. Of course, a toe injury is going to be something that saps him of his play and efficiency and how well he is able to contribute out there, how much he is able to contribute out there, right? It sucks that ended up being the way it was. And here's the thing. I am not totally excusing Darius Garland's career playoff woes, but what I will say is that I was genuinely of the belief that had he not sustained that injury and then re-aggravated, Darius probably cooks teams in the playoffs. And we did end up getting a small glimpse of what that might look like in the first 2 games against Miami, in which he was nearly unstoppable. But unfortunately, that's all we really got. Right. He did appear in other games, but those 2 in general were the ones that he stood out the most. That, to me, at least that's my belief. In those 2 games, he averaged 24 points, 7 assists, and shot 51.6% from the field, including 41.2% from 3-point range, while knocking down 90% of his free throws. Now, people can dismiss those games all they want, but the reality here is that it was still a playoff series, for one, and for 2, it still happened, right? It still counts. I genuinely believe that was the DG that we were likely in store for had he not gotten injured. But alas, we find ourselves here awaiting the possibilities of that finally happening come the 2025-26 postseason. We just got to be patient. Therefore, my expectations are mostly centered around playoff success as it relates to Darius Garland. For starters, health, health, health. Let me repeat it one more time. Health. I need to see Darius Garland remain healthy for an entire playoff run, throughout the entirety of a playoff run for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. And it's not like we haven't seen him do that before. Garland did play all 5 games against the New York Knicks in the 2022-23 playoffs. He played in all 12 games in 2023-24 against the Magic and the Celtics thereafter. Regardless, it is a what have you done lately for me type of league oftentimes. And honestly, this is no different. I need to see him do this all over again next season. Next up, and this is probably the most important thing, I expect him to be the true orchestrator and engine of this Cavaliers offense. And this is no slight to Evan Mobley, who is very quickly putting himself in best player on the team consideration territory, or Donovan Mitchell, who is actually that at the moment. But things just flow a little more steadily with Darius Garland leading the way, with him controlling the reins. His command of the offense and ball handling often dictate the outcome of a lot of these games, right? It was a huge reason why he's so vital out there. After all, he was among the clutchest players in the NBA just last season, totaling the association's 8th most clutch points with 103 of those on the season. Now, during the 2024-25 regular season, Darius Garland was the Cavaliers' leader in touches per game with 63.9 per outing. But during the 2024-25 playoffs, mind you, Donovan Mitchell was the Cavaliers' leader in touches per game with 62.4. Now, a lot of that, as you could probably imagine, is because of Darius suffering that toe sprain that eventually caused him to miss 4 games. But if you filter things for just the first 2 outings, you're a little more balanced. You see a little bit more balance in terms of the touches out there between Darius and Donovan. And as a result of that, things were dead even split at 61.5 touches per game in those first 2 games against Miami. And I think Kenny Atkinson and company, the coaching staff, really the entire roster know that Darius Garland is a critical part of their offense, right? He's a critical part of their success come the playoffs when teams honestly tend to play things a little bit more closely and dare your best players, especially your on-ball guys, to beat drop coverages and to overcome perimeter challenges out there, whether that be perimeter defenders out there who they'll throw at you. You'll see a whole bunch of different bodies out there if you're Donovan or Darius on a nightly basis in the playoffs. Now, when he is able to function as the primary ball handler, it does happen to take a lot of pressure off of Donovan Mitchell, who has damn near killed himself out there trying to will the Cavaliers to victory in back-to-back postseasons. That's not a sustainable path forward. I think all of us, honestly, and if you haven't come to this realization yet, I pray that you do soon, but that is not a sustainable path forward. It's not a sustainable path to a title for this Cavaliers team. You do not want Donovan Mitchell to grind himself into the ground. That is something that, honestly, I think some people are concerned with heading into the start of the 2025-26 regular season, with Darius and Max Strus both due to miss the start of the season. You don't want Donovan Mitchell to out or overwork himself or play himself into an injury. And to those that believe things need to be running through Evan Mobley, trust me, I get it. I understand that thought process and I understand that mindset. But what you don't want to do, especially when Darius comes back, is take the ball out of his hands completely. Yeah, that is not what you want to do, right? You don't want to do that to accomplish things. You want DG to willingly put Evan in the right positions to be successful. You want him to willingly either give up those touches, or you want him to willingly pass the rock to Evan Mobley in a favorable spot. Now, his chemistry with the bigs is critical to ball movement out there, as he and Donovan Mitchell tend to get the ball to their players in different ways, especially the bigs. Now, this should be really, really clear, like crystal clear to most fans out there if they watch that series in the games that Darius Garland did not suit up for, right? Donovan Mitchell does not move the ball in the same way that Darius Garland does. Is that me saying that Donovan Mitchell cannot facilitate? No, we have seen him look like a high level facilitator out there, a high level playmaker out there. We have seen him get guys like Sam Merrill and Dean Wade good looks from the perimeter. But what I'm saying is the feel for how the flow of the offense goes, it kind of looks completely different when you have Donovan Mitchell running the show juxtaposed to Darius Garland running the show. I think that to me is something that should be rather obvious to most fans if you watch the entirety of that series and you watch the entirety of the regular season and just how things run when Donovan is running the point. There just are noticeable differences out there. Darius is much more pick and roll, lob attempt at the rim for Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen out there. And don't get me wrong, he can drive a kick. As a high number of his assists out there last season did go to perimeter shooters. But I think it's the way in which he's passing the rock that is it's felt. It's something that is visibly clear out there. So I think that what you want to do is you want to make sure that once Darius Garland does come back, that you're not taking the ball out of his hands purely based upon what you have seen in the first couple of weeks with him probably not being available. Something that I also expect is for Darius Garland to finally put to bed any question of him being a true liability defensively out there come the postseason. And to that latter point, here is the thing. I fully recognize that as long as the team is structured as it currently is, Darius Garland is always likely to remain a quote unquote target of the defense, or rather one of the first entry points due to his lack of size. That cannot be argued. That is something that is likely always to be the case, especially if Donovan Mitchell is his backcourt running mate. However, as I have often said on this show, there is a difference. I need people to understand this. There is a difference between being a liability and being a target. And for what it's worth, he's actually held his own in isolation or on switches. I talked about that rather recently as well. That does not mean that teams can't scheme up ways to take advantage of his lack of size, though. He has to be aware of that. Kenny Atkinson has to be aware of that. The whole entire Cavs roster has to be aware of that. They will try to scheme up ways to get Darius Garland out there as the quote unquote weakest link or target or entry point of the defense. It just is what it is. So what I would like to see happen is Darius Garland to continue to put forth that concerted effort to extinguish any doubt that fans and analysts alike have of him being a bad defender, because that is a label that I've often seen addressed or thrown upon Darius Garland, is that he is a bad defender, when that is not honestly the case anymore. He came into the league as that, but over the last couple of seasons, and this started with JB, honestly, and it continued under Kenny Atkinson last year, Darius Garland is not a bad defender. He's just undersized. So what does that actually look like? That's a hard question to answer. What I want him to do, though, is continue to commit to navigate screens right there more effectively out there. And mind you, that's actually an area where Darius Garland has traditionally fared very well. And just last season, he placed within the 80th percentile in ball screen navigation per B-ball index. He was also very, very high, 90th percentile plus in terms of off-ball chaser defense, something where he is able to chase his assignment around and through screens. Darius has actually been one of the better guards on the roster, one of the better players actually at doing that on the roster. You want to see him commit to rotating quicker out there. You want to see him add additional strength and muscle so that he is not as easily overtaken by bigger guards and wings. And that goes both ways on offense too. You want to see him have that additional muscle out there, that additional mass, so that he is not constantly being beaten up. We all know, like, the classic example of that is the Jordan rules, where Jordan returned after getting absolutely slacked against the Detroit Pistons. He had to add that additional muscle. Or a more The recent example of that is Steph Curry and having to add that additional muscle and bulk to his body to be able to withstand the nightly beatings that he could take at the NBA level. So you want Darius Garland to do that as a kind of a shield for himself, protect himself, put that armor on. That is what I expect Darius Garland to do. And I know with him due to miss the start of the season, that's going to be a hard thing to do because we already know that jaw injury, all that weight that he lost, it took him a while to put that back on just because it's hard to put on weight during the regular season. And when he returned, he wasn't quite able to do that in season. He had to take the off season to put that weight back on. And what did he do? He came back and he experienced another all-star level season. And that was phenomenal. But that all ended come the playoffs. And I know that some of these injuries, you can't really account for them. They're kind of, spontaneous. They'll happen. And that toe sprain certainly was. You can't necessarily plan on that. You can't necessarily train too hard for that. But I think that Darius Garland, if he adds that additional muscle, that additional mass to his frame, he'll be in a much better position to be able to withstand injuries like that. And so I know this is all long-winded, but if I had to boil it down to three main expectations for Darius Garland, it's this. Number one, stay healthy for the bulk of the season and the entire playoffs. And before I get to my second point, I just have to say this. Darius Garland actually played a career high in terms of games during the regular season. 75 total appearances for Darius. That is by far the most games that he has ever played. Previous game high was previous seasonal high was 69, which came back during the 2022-23 season. And if you add playoff appearances into that, I think it actually elevates even further. He played between the playoffs and the regular season. Darius actually played 80 total games. Not necessarily his career best, I don't think. Well, it actually might be. I think he played all 12 postseason games during his 2023-24 playoffs, but he only played in 57 games. That was the same season in which he suffered that jaw injury. So if you combine those two, 69 total games. So the 80 total games that he played last year between the playoffs and the regular season, that's a career high across the board. So you want to see him replicate that to a degree, but you want to see him be able to sustain himself come the playoffs. So he's got to be able to stay healthy throughout the entirety of the season and the entirety of the playoff run. Next up, my next expectation is for him to be aggressive, be an aggressive scorer out there, be an aggressive ball handler out there, especially come playoffs. Do not play passive. It's pretty straightforward, in my opinion. Do not start the 2025-26 campaign passive. Come out there and don't play no games, right? Take names out there, kick ass, do all that. Remind people just how important you can be to this Cavaliers team. Remind people just how talented of an offensive player you are, really an overall player. So that is my second expectation for him. My third expectation is to not be a defensive liability. Be somebody that people no longer look at as a true liability out there. Be somebody that people can't say is a bad defender. Be somebody out there that people can't call you an entry point of this defense. And I know that people who have been watching Darius Garland, or rather who have been watching the Cavaliers over the last 4 to 5 seasons, have been able to tell that Darius Garland has become a better overall defender. But I think that by and large, the casual fan, they don't understand the intricacies of what it means to be a quote unquote good defender or a bad defender. Darius, he is limited by his size. He always will be. But the thing about that is you can overcome that through your heart, through your hustle, and through your effort out there. And I think Darius Garland has consistently shown year in and year out that whether he is isolated upon or whether or not he is out there trying to keep up on the switch, he has proven that he can improve. He has proven that he does give maximum effort out there. You just can't make up for size. You can't teach size. And at 6'1", Darius Garland is always going to be at a disadvantage there. That doesn't take away from the fact, though, that I think that he is not a defensive liability. So continue that evolution, continue that growth, and will be in a good place for Darius Garland heading into the 2025-26 season. Now, purely from a statistical standpoint, as a lot of people like to boil these expectations down to, right? I expect another highly efficient season for Darius Garland. Now, I know I've used this graphic about 10,000 times out there, but this was Darius Garland last year. 20.6 points, 2.9 rebounds, 6.7 assists. He shot 47.2% from the field, including 40.1% from three-point range, and he shot 87.8% from the charity stripe, and he did this in only 30.7 minutes per game. Now, as much as I have said this, it remains the truth. Last year was one of the best seasons that we have seen from Darius Garland, maybe ever. Maybe beating out the first All-Star campaign and the 2022-23 season, in which many people believe he should have been voted to the All-Star team. So, do I expect a rather similar outcome for Darius next year? Yes. From a efficiency standpoint, from a statistical standpoint, I expect another similar season. Not 50, 40, 90 like he was flirting with this year, but somewhere maybe in the neighborhood of 46, 40, and 87 while scoring 20 or more points for the second straight season and clearing 9 assists per game for the first time in his career. That is something that I very much want to see happen. That is something that I very much think is possible for Darius. Now, it should be noted that this is a player who has not managed to crack 8 or over 8 assists per game since back during the 2021-22 season, that first true breakout for him. And obviously this coincides with the arrival of Donovan Mitchell, as Donovan has taken on a lot more of those lead ball handler, or they have split those reps between another. So they're not getting the same, or rather he is not getting the same amount of touches that he was used to that season. So of course the assists were going to go down. And he's kind of fluctuated, going between 6 and 7 in the seasons that have followed. So for me, I want to see Darius Garland, if he is to kind of take a step back and allow Evan Mobley to further improve as an on-ball player and get those additional reps on ball. Yeah, I think it's certainly possible for Darius to climb up to that 9 assists per game mark out there. But that is going to require the offense to be structured a certain way. It's going to require a certain level of commitment from Darius to move the rock and not necessarily look to score out there. And we know that Darius, I know the stats tend to indicate that he has passed first, but Darius Garland is a very dangerous scorer in his own right. So I think he's just like Donovan Mitchell has had to in recent years. I think Darius is going to have to reaffirm his commitment to team basketball out there. And I know that he has always been that way, but I think it is certainly possible for him to see 9, maybe even 10 assists out there, depending upon how the Cavaliers operate. And again, something that I think not a lot of people take into consideration here in terms of the statistical output of it. Darius, since he didn't play even 31 minutes per game, a lot of those stats, right, you have to take them with a grain of salt, because if he was playing the usual complement of minutes that many starters in the NBA do, 33, 34 minutes per game, he probably is looking at a season in which he is averaging 22, 23 points per game and 9 or 10 assists out there with the way that the Cavaliers were operating last year. So if the Cavaliers end up, not necessarily following that same trend that they did last year, and they're giving their starters more minutes, those stats will look great. But if it is similar to last year in terms of that minutes per game output, and let me say this, let me clarify, I am not opposed to Darius Garland becoming, or Darius Garland rather, getting the minutes that he got last year in an attempt to keep him fresh, especially when you have Lonzo Ball on the roster, especially when you're trying to evaluate what you actually have in Craig Porter Jr. But I would also not be opposed, considering the fact that it didn't matter last year whether or not the Cavaliers low managed their players or held their minutes or cut their minutes back. It doesn't matter. Because come the playoffs, it still resulted in an injury, or it still ended up the same way with an injury. So if he does play 33 or 34 minutes per game, I wouldn't be mad at that. I just don't want the guys to be burnt up come the end of the year. And I think you're going to have to use this first month or two of the regular season where you could be without Darius and Max to evaluate what you have in these younger players, so that you can lean on them during the dog days of the season and into the playoffs. But for Darius overall, I'm expecting another strongly efficient season. I'm expecting him to come out looking to kick ass. I'm expecting him to finally put together a full playoff run and contribute on a high level, right? Because again, he played in every single game during the 2023-24 season, or during the 2023-24 playoffs, rather. But he was not nearly as effective as we know he is capable of being. And I know a lot of that boils down to the jaw injury that he sustained. But at the end of the day, I think people are tired of hearing injury excuses. People are tired of hearing about having those first time playoff jitters. People are tired of hearing the lights are too bright. People are tired of hearing excuses. And I think it is important to distinguish the difference between reason and excuse. But I think the casual fan, the casual Cavs fan, doesn't really care about the difference. Nobody's going to care about what this team does on an overall level until the playoffs begin. That is just the reality of where they have placed themselves at. But for Darius Garland specifically, I think I'm at a point with him where I don't really care as much about the regular season success. I want him to go out there and have a great playoff run and dispel any notion that he isn't long for Cleveland and that people need to be, or that he needs to move on, or he needs to be moved. Because I'm not in that camp of people. I'm not in that group. I don't share that mindset. I think that this can work, but obviously they have to go out there and prove that. And Darius specifically has to go out there and prove that. But those are my expectations. Stay healthy, be aggressive come the playoffs, be impactful come the playoffs, and don't be a defensive liability. I'll be damned. I don't really care about the stat production of it all. I just want him to go out there and contribute in a meaningful way come the playoffs. And I want him to stay healthy out there. That is where I'm at. I will continue this series for each and every player on the roster. Sucks that I have to start with a player who is very likely to miss time to open the season. And by and large, I think what is being reported for Darius Garland, at least in terms of timing of it all, is that Darius is very likely to miss the start of the season, as it has been reported by Cleveland.com's Chris Fedor that he is not even likely to be ready for the start of training camp, at least per the indication that Fedor got from Kenny Atkinson when asking him. So I just don't expect him to be ahead of schedule. I don't expect him to make his season debut at the start of the season. I just think that's the place where we're at. But the beauty in it is that the Cavaliers now have a solid enough depth at that position between Lonzo and Donovan and Craig. And, you could even lump Jalen Tyson into this as well. Hell, give Sam Merrill some on-ball reps. Give Evan Mobley some of those reps. Let him be Point Mobley out there. They're in a good enough position to be able to withstand this and hold things down, hold the fort down from a ball handling perspective until Darius gets back. So you don't have to rush him. So that's where we're at here. Hopefully we get to experience all of these things that I have mentioned. Hopefully Darius Garland comes back and has a season for the ages. But as I always tell you guys, if you like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot, send a review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. If you want to support the pod in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. Hell, you can do it on YouTube as well for as little as $1 a month. As always, go Cavs.